one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Danishes and Dragons, your RPG morning show. My name is Ryan Howard. I am your host and King of the Boneheads. Let me, real quick, move my light over, because I forgot to do that in getting set up this morning. There we go. Now you can see more of my face as I'm adjusting my camera like a consummate professional. Because I just forgot to sit down and check and see where the camera would hit when I was setting up this morning. All right. Cool. Well, guys, welcome to Danishes and Dragons. Today we are not going to play Baldur's Gate because a good friend of mine, someone I've worked with as far as, my logos are concerned, that of course being Andrew Kolb, as you heard a couple episodes ago, has a new setting for 5th edition out right now, based on Neverland. So, now that we've talked it over with him, what I'm going to do is just go in here and show you guys, pretty much top to bottom, show you the book. I'm not going to get into spoilers or anything like that, so don't worry. This is just going to be kind of an overview of what you'll be getting with this particular package. And just kind of reiterating some of the stuff that Andrew told us back a couple weeks ago. Before we get into that, though, we have this morning's breakfast to talk about, that being potatoes. I love to eat potatoes for breakfast. Potatoes are a good breakfast food. I say that as a proud descendant of the Celts. They go great with eggs, they go great with cheese. Both bacon and sausage seem to work with potatoes. Obviously, corned beef does as well. They're a very versatile breakfast item. You can rice them and turn them into hash browns. Potatoes absolutely should be riced. I know that my older sister is not watching this, but I just putting that out there in the universe in case any of you run into my older sister. Perhaps if your child ends up in the hospital at an undisclosed location in Tennessee and the pharmacist is bringing them drugs, if you look at the pharmacist and say, "Are you the sister of Ryan Howard, King of the Boneheads?" and she says, "Yes, I am," then you can look her in the eyes and say, "Potatoes should be riced." My older sister hates all forms of riced potatoes. She does not like tater tots. She does not like hash browns. And we have checked, and as far as we know, she is not associated with any enemies of the United States. But you would be forgiven for thinking so by holding that kind of anti-American, anti-fun, anti-freedom sentiment of thinking that potatoes should not be riced. That is utter nonsense, and I will champion the ricing of potatoes at every turn, because hash browns and tater tots are some of the best things you can do with potatoes. Even if Samwise Gamgee leaves them out of his potential potato dishes when he is talking to Gollum, He only mentions boiling them, mashing them, or sticking them in a stew. There's so much more that you can do with potatoes, including ricing them. However, I'm just going to assume that the hobbits did not have access to the tools to create good riced potatoes on the road to Mordor, so I will forgive him for his glaring omission. So, what I've got here is just some potatoes that I diced up. I diced up some gold potatoes with some onions and stuck them in a cast iron skillet that I buttered. You're actually supposed to use bacon grease, but we've been over why bacon grease is a no-go in this particular household before. But it ended up turning out okay. It would have been a lot better if I hadn't gone so heavy-handed with the garlic. I believe the recipe called for 4 cloves. I've got like minced garlic that I have in the fridge, and I think I overestimated how much garlic 4 cloves would be. So there's garlic just kind of all over the place, and garlic is a great thing. I love garlic. Elfie will tell you there is no such thing as too much garlic, which I tend to agree with, but there are certain situations where subtle flavors will just be overrun by garlic. And potatoes do have a very subtle flavor. They tend to take on the flavors that go with them, as do eggs, which is another key ingredient here. So basically all I'm getting from these potatoes that I made is cheddar cheese and garlic, which is fine, but the other flavors need room to breathe. Excuse me. So next time I will use less garlic. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's pretty good. It's just kind of a recipe I found online. Basically what I did was after I cooked up the potatoes and onions for a while, I put in some garlic, I put in some salt and pepper, and then let that cook for a minute, and then I cracked 4 eggs into there, and I made little wells for them, so they've got like four eggs that ended up kind of over hard. I think they're supposed to be over medium, so I might have overcooked them. I also probably had the skillet too hot when I put them in. I should have turned it down to low when I put the garlic in, and then after that minute passed, drop the eggs in. But you live and you learn. And yeah, that's what we've got today. So I'll take another bite here. And then I grated cheddar cheese for the last like minute or so and put that on top. And it called for green onions. I left the green onions out because there were already white onions in there. But you know, you can do that too. Green onions go great with potatoes. So, a couple updates on things going down here. I'm just going to drop this here. I'll remind you guys at the end of the show, too. But as far as miniature painting is going, I was recently gifted Batman the Animated Series Gotham City Under Siege by an anonymous donor who, even though I figured out who it was, still wishes to remain anonymous. So I thank them for that. But I've been painting the minis that came with it. So I've got Robin right here. He's the only one that I've painted so far. And I mention this because when I posted Robin on Instagram, will you come into focus there? You can see a better picture on my Instagram, which is at Howard_RyanGregg. If you are not already following me, you can see that under my picture here. The Twitter handle, that's also my Instagram handle. So give me a follow if you want to see better quality pictures of my miniatures. But I tagged IDW Games in the post because I always tag the company whose miniatures I'm painting. Usually it's Reaper. Usually I get no response. But this time they actually dropped a comment and, you know, told me that they loved it and they can't wait to see me paint the Oggs figures, which is cool because those Oggs figures are coming next month. So I am on the radar of IDW Games, which is cool. And by on the radar, I mean, their social media guy is like, hey, someone tagged us. Let's see what this is up. Okay, that's not bad. Like, leave a comment. And they said they like the comic style thing that I did, which is cool. I wish I could take credit for that, but no, that credit belongs to Mike Cousins, because he is the master of comic style. And just to let you guys know, another few things that are coming up. At some point, I'll be doing a full review of this. This is Index Cards RPG, the core book for 2nd edition. I picked that up earlier this week because Hankerin Furnell is actually coming back on the show. He'll be on in a couple weeks, the week before Thanksgiving. He'll be back on, which is great because every time he comes on, it's amazing. He's been on once before. People love the guy. I think he's cool. So yeah, it'll be fun to talk with him, and we'll be drinking and having fun on that episode. So I hope you guys join in for that. And that's not to overshadow next week's episode, because next week's episode is also with a very cool guest who I'm super happy to bring on. That is, of course, fantasy author and YouTuber Seth Skorkowski, who kind of focuses a lot of his content on, I think he's mostly running like Cyberpunk 2020, Call of Cthulhu, and Conan seem to be his primary games. So we'll be talking a lot about Conan because I'm a descendant of Robert E. Howard and I like that stuff. We'll probably also talk a lot about cyberpunk, because cyberpunk as a genre is something I've always wanted to get into. And it's always been just kind of a toss-up of, which setting do I use, which system is the best. I've got Interface 0 over here, which, it's Savage Worlds, and I love Savage Worlds. It seems like it'll work pretty well. So I'll probably, my first Cyberpunk game that I run will probably be Interface 0. The book is daunting, though. It's massive. I'd pick it up, but I already scooted over there too many times today. So it's like this thick. It's like the size of, it's almost the same size as Spaceships and Star Worms. It is the same size as Star Trek Adventures. But it's a hefty tome. It's the same size as Zweihander as well. So it is a big book filled with, this is what the entire world is doing in the cyberpunk universe, which is cool. And what I'd probably do is some kind of cyberpunkified version of either Atlanta or Nashville if I were running a game. I like the idea of Southern cyberpunk because, one, it hasn't been explored to like the best of my knowledge. People just kind of ignore it. And two, I think there's a lot of really interesting things to explore in a kind of Southern setting, because in the South right now, as someone who lives in the urban South and grew up in the urban South, you very much have this weird clash of urban and rural, because let's take Nashville as an example, because that's where I am right now. It's only about a 20-minute drive from downtown Nashville to the sticks. It really is. It doesn't take long for you to get out into the middle of nowhere in any direction. And so, how do you deal with that concept in a cyberpunk world where urban sprawl just kind of spreads and spreads and spreads? So at some point, there seem to be, geographical features of the South that would prevent an urban sprawl from spreading too terribly far. There's a lot of hills, a lot of mountains, in some places a lot of swamps. And so there would be a limit to how far the sprawl could grow without, like serious terraforming. And there's also this streak of individualism that you can't remove from Southern people. There's always going to be someone who just wants to live out in the woods and be left alone, or multiple someones who want to live out in the woods and be left alone. So if I were running a cyberpunk game, that's what I would explore. You'd have the mega city. You'd have a southern mega city kind of centered around. Typically, those mega cities take up like multiple U.S. cities. Usually like the southern mega city combines everything from Charlotte to Dallas, which is a huge like swath across the bottom part of the U.S. So, you could do something like that, have it centered in like a Nashville district, or, I could make smaller megacities. But yeah, there would be a lot of exploration of, if you leave the city, what are you going to run into? You're going to run into a bunch of people who hate technology because it takes over their lives. They hate the mega corporations because, again, they're stealing their land and stuff like that. So they're going to be very hostile towards these megacity dwellers. And I feel like there's a lot of cool crossover that could happen between urban and rural. And leaving the city, going out in the country where these people are very much not familiar. There's no electricity or anything like that. Well, there'll probably be some electricity, but it's not as prevalent as it would be elsewhere. Away from the neon, it'd probably be like eerily quiet for these characters. Not a lot of connection. There's not screens everywhere. There's not cameras everywhere. And so having, cyberpunk players dealing with that kind of environment really kind of appeals to me. It appeals to me as a GM who likes to take characters who are familiar with a certain environment and then just like shove them into something completely different. I do it with my Dark Sun players. Cool. So, that is kind of what's coming up. I'll remind everyone of that at the end of the episode. But for now, let's dig into the meat and potatoes, pun completely intended, of today's episode. That being the review of Neverland 5e. Let me get everything set up here. And let's go ahead and move on over there. I'm down here now. All right. Cool. So, yeah, this is the cover of Neverland 5e. It's a cool, kind of storybook-looking cover. I've not gotten my physical copy yet, but I've seen a physical copy. Tim posted a picture of his physical copy. It's very much got like a storybook feel to it in its binding and its cover. Very cool, very nice. So, as we discussed, this is published by Andrew McMeel. It was written and illustrated by Andrew Kolb. Former guest Daniel D. Fox had a lot to do with this, since he is the RPG guy at Andrews McMeel. As you can see in the credits there, he is the executive creative director of RPGs. His story of getting involved with Andrews McMeel is very, very interesting. The way they approached him and all that, it's really cool to see a company like that getting involved in this. So, we move on down here, and we've got the table of contents, all kinds of different things. The very end of this book is pretty much devoted entirely to stat blocks, and then you've got like maps of everything. And then there's the whole Elephame kind of fairy world thing, which we'll get into in a little bit. And yeah, just moving on down. So, here's our introduction to the world of Neverland. as we discussed with Andrew, this is kind of set after the events of Peter Pan. And there's a very kind of dark, sinister underpinning to all of this. Now, as Andrew said, you can play this as, lighthearted or as sinister as you want. Really, though, in my mind, and maybe it's just the way I read this book, you can certainly, run this for kids who won't see the sinister side of things. I can't not see it. I can't not see kind of the dark underpinnings of all of this. So, this kind of gets into all of the various happenings for these different characters that you're familiar with. So Peter Pan is still bringing children to the island. Some of them are, hanging out with him and joining the Lost Boys. But some of them are disappearing. And where they're going is Elfame, which is the land of the fairies. And there's some kind of secretive deal with Queen Mab of the fairies, where someone has promised her these children to pay off a debt. It's not Peter. He doesn't know what's going on. He's kind of being used as a pawn in this game, and so that's kind of how you can introduce Peter Pan as an NPC in this particular world. Either that, or if your characters join up with the pirates, he becomes an adversary, I suppose. And the Lost Boys are the ones who are too rowdy to be taken to Queen Mab. At this point, you could probably throw in, like Rufio if you're super into Hook or something like that. You can probably mix and match who your Lost Boys are. Then you have the pirates. And the pirates have made some kind of deal with the devil. Maybe even a deal with Mab. I don't know. That might be the reveal. That might be the spoiler. That is for you and your players to explore. But basically, they've got like a Pirates of the Caribbean situation going on where they are dead. They are dead and only live at night. So they turn to skeletons in the daylight, and then they live at night. The only exception to that is Hook, because Hook has recovered a fallen star, which is a source of very powerful magic in this world, which he keeps in his chest cavity, and it allows him to live day or night. So he basically takes care of the pirates during the daytime because he's alive then. And he is working with these giant spiders on the island of Neverland. So then you have Wendy, John, and Michael Darling, and when they came to the island, they, for some reason, did not have anything to do with the deal made with Mab. So they kind of got forgotten about, and they grew up. They have a serious sensation of abandonment, which has warped what they are. So Wendy has become a swamp hag. John learned how to use magic and turned himself into a lich. And Michael is living amongst Father Longlegs and the Longleg spiders, who are basically like Daddy Longlegs. They're the peaceful spiders, whereas the other spiders are evil. So if you want to freak your players out you've got two different factions of giant spiders to work with. Then, of course, you have the mermaids, who are alluring, and they trick people into giving up their stuff. And then you have the crocodile, who, as we mentioned, is basically a kaiju. He's a giant gargantuan crocodile. So if you want to fight him, good luck. But he's there, he's around, and he's freaking enormous. Then you have the Tilwith Teg. These are the indigenous people of Neverland. They don't like the pirates. They probably don't like the spiders either. And then there are dryads known as the Elders who, make the decisions. And the others, the young ones are apparently impatient and impulsive. And, so there's conflict within the Tilwith Teg. Then there are the gnomes. There's a hamlet of gnomes. And they are amiable people. They get along with the inhabitants. And they kind of helped Wendy learn about shadow sewing. Then there's the great white bird, another kaiju. If you fly too high, this is the one who taught Peter how to fly without wings. If you fly too high, though, he'll murder you. Then, of course, you have the spiders. They have ambitions even beyond Neverland, and they think that they can use the pirates' Jolly Roger to get across the ocean and take over new worlds. There are giant insects called the Giants. They live in the Great Mound. The great white bird hunts them. And they seem to be just kind of neutral in general. There are the cunning folk, who are elderly nomads. They want to recruit the swamp hag. They're hiding in the northern mountains. There's the shadow, which is Peter's shadow, which was severed from him. And it's basically another monster. There's Queen Mab, of course, and the inhabitants of Eltham. And she's got various different portals into Neverland, and she has made a deal for power with an unknown entity, and is looking to collect on that debt by capturing mortal children. So, as we discussed with Andrew, this is a hex crawl. So what that means for anyone who's not done it, you don't have an overarching story, necessarily. Basically, your players have come to Neverland for, whatever reason. You as the GM, it's on you to come up with that. You start in one space, and you just explore and uncover story as you go. So with this, Andrew has a very in-depth, not complicated, but very in-depth, very comprehensive time system. So each hex represents 2 miles, and it takes about 4 hours to travel. Or you can use 4 hours to explore a given hex to find other features. And there's a lot of stuff that happens kind of based on the timing of your exploration. There's a couple different ways to travel as well. Of course, you can fly if you have pixie dust. If it's given to you willingly, then your DC is lower. If you have to kill a pixie or, steal its dust, then your DC is higher. There's hollow trees, which also can be used to explore. There's whirlpools, which are like portals in the ocean that the mermaids use to explore. If you explore them without knowing, where the mermaids are, or without having consulted with them, you're probably going to end up in deep deep trouble. And then the pirates have these like vaults that they've constructed to hide their bones in. And they can also serve as like bunkers. So you can raid pirate stores. And then here we have this clock of the events that happen in Neverland. So from midnight to about 4 in the morning, actually from midnight till about 8 in the morning, up through dawn, that's when the crocodile patrols. So the crocodile's actively swimming around from midnight through dawn. Then during the daytime, about 9 to 3, actually 9 to 4, the crocodile suns itself on the island. Then from about 4 to 10, actually 4 to 11, the crocodile rests. So, if you figure this out, if you figure out this timing of this particular kind of patrol schedule, you can figure out where the crocodile will be, and if you're looking to hunt the crocodile, you might be able to find it. So this explains kind of the routine of the island, 24-hour day cycle. There's also like different moon phases, which show where the crocodile will be depending on, like from a full moon to a waning gibbous. The crocodile's in hex 18. The rest of the time he's in hex 15, it seems like. So this is all stuff that you as the dungeon master will need to know. Your players should not know this off the bat. They should figure it out. Another thing that the clock controls is fallen stars, which are a source of power. So any spell that's cast within 500 feet of a fallen star during the first 4 hours, you basically have a wild magic surge, and there's a star surge table. And so, you can harvest these stars within 24 hours of them falling, and gain power from it. Or if you don't, they become lumps of iron. I'm going to take a quick break, and I will be right back. All right, we're back. So, as we were talking about, pretty much everything is kind of time-based as far as the crocodile, falling stars. And then one thing that we need to mention with the falling stars is you can actually randomly roll for it. So this will allow you to, you roll a d4 for the week and 1d6 for the date, multiply the results for the night that the star will fall, and then you roll and multiply again to determine which hex it'll land on. So there's a mechanic there for randomizing these events, and it might be, there might be something that requires a fallen star that your players are going to have to figure out, when and where it's going to go, or where to look for it. There'll be, like a 24-hour race to get there, to harvest it before its magic goes away. And so each day at the first and last moments of direct sunlight, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., the gentle sound of chimes can be heard across the island. No one knows the source, and most avoid speaking of it. Strange things happen during the 6 minutes of chiming, and most avoid speaking of that as well. So, there's some crazy things that happen right as the sun is coming up, and right as the sun is going down. So, if you want to play around with what's going on there, that's definitely something that you can do. And then there are the crocodile and its spawn. And so at the start of each full moon, which is the third week, 13th night, the crocodile heads for the waterfall, which is hex 18. It spends a full week laying a crap ton of eggs, and then it returns to the sunning spot. After laying the eggs, crocodile will spend the remainder of the moon cycle trying to protect its clutch. So yeah, if you go near the waterfall during that cycle, you might have to deal with a crocodile. And, he does this so that, once they hatch, they'll be safe. So there are crocodile spawn all over the place. He does this every month. So, this could, there seems to be infinite numbers of crocodile spawn all over the place. The pirates often attack the crocodile nest during the darkest time of the month, during the new moon. And they do what they can to catch the crocodile spawn and kill them. Pirates get trapped in the nest. So if you go there during the kind of the new moon phase, you'll probably run into pirates, and you may have to deal with recently captured pirates. So there's a couple different ways to, kind of have fun and stuff like that. A couple different rules for magic. You've got names. This is a thing in a lot of different settings, but, the true name of something will have power. And sometimes names of power are, written in books, held in trinkets, and it's kind of a key thing around Neverland and Elefame, and some creatures can't die unless they're killed by someone who knows their name. So that's interesting. Children and fairies. We've already talked a little bit about the deal between Queen Mab and an unknown party. And let's see. So yeah, you'll probably have to deal with fairies trying to make, bargains, trying to make bargains with your players and stuff like that. So then there's a couple different couple different magical items that are used to protect people from magic. You know, you've got the witch bottle, which will help you kind of protect against spellcasters of a specific type. You've got Fettered Heart, which is taking and hammering the heart of an enemy's familiar. That sounds fun. And then the Cunning Doll, which is basically a voodoo doll. And let's see. Got a couple other just kind of miscellaneous things here. Little bit of talk about fairies. Some other things that you can read about. There's a living tower, which the windows and door act as its eyes and mouth. The contents, if any, are up for debate. Whether the tower chooses to converse is up to the game master. So yeah, there's a tower that you can talk to, potentially, if you don't upset him. There's also living boulders. There's lots of fountains. And then, you know, as far as food and water go, you'll have to forage. There's lots of kind of foragers running around and stuff like that. There's all kinds of natural food and stuff to eat. The Lost Boys will probably be a good resource for your players as far as finding food in abundance. And then apparently there are weak points between Elefame and Neverland where you can conjure food with belief. And you just kind of roll randomly for that. And then there's some talk about the native inhabitants. Basically, for anyone kind of familiar with Neverland, the Indian tribe has been replaced with these dryads. So Tiger Lily is a dryad now, and stuff like that. You'll be dealing with dryads rather than with Native Americans. This was done for cultural sensitivity reasons. So that's why there are no Indians in this book, just so you know. And then let's see. As far as, these are the advanced rules, so this will talk about, exploring and a D4 roll for random encounters. Let's see. So yeah, there's rules for exploration. If you need to return to another hex and find something that you discovered previously, there's a roll that you'll have to make. Because I guess some things will be, discovered again or, disappear. It's a magical world, so there's lots of different things that'll happen. You can scavenge the dead. Because, it's a good way to not waste resources. So that's definitely something that you can do here as well. That's kind of a DC-based scavenging roll. Then there's some chase sequence rules here. So, basically, you set the win condition based on the difficulty and group size. Low challenges may be 5 wins before 5 losses, and high challenges, 6 wins before 2. And this is actually done with rock, paper, scissors. So in the rules, attack is rock, evade is paper, and sprint is scissors. So, attack beats sprint, sprint beats evade, evade beats attack. I'm actually not sure about this particular mechanic. I don't know. It's something kind of brought in from LARPing. There are the reason behind this is chase mechanics in 5e are a little bit difficult to pin down. It's hard to do chases. A lot of people have struggled with it. So a lot of times there will be, we're bringing in something from outside. There are chase mechanics in Spaceships and Star Worms that are decent, that are, kind of based on skill checks and stuff like that. A lot of other systems have good chase mechanics. Savage Worlds has good ones. Top Secret, actually no, Classified, that's what it is. Classified, the James Bond RPG, has a very good chase mechanic. It's completely different from what 5e is, though, so... But yeah, this brings in a whole different set of mechanics. And so the idea here is that you need to, win more than you lose. You have to win a certain amount to, reach this thing, and you'll be playing Rochambeau against the Dungeon Master. There are other things that play out as you do this, though. So if both of you throw rock, both throw attack, plays out like normal combat, roll for 1 round of initiative, and the only attacks that you can make are cantrips or ranged weapon attacks against armor. Hit or miss doesn't make it a loss, but it doesn't change it to a win either. If you throw attack and they throw sprint, you roll with advantage, still ranged weapons and cantrips. Attack versus evade, the attacker rolls at disadvantage. Sprint versus evade, both roll a check appropriate to the environment, so, acrobatics, athletics. And if the sprinter wins, then they get to remove a failure and make up lost ground on top of the win. Sprint versus sprint, so if there's a tie there, the pursuer can choose to roll an appropriate check with bonuses relevant to the environment with the risk of a half win or a half loss affecting the total. And then evade versus evade, it's same as sprint versus sprint. So yeah, this could end up being kind of complicated. It makes sense when you read through it, but it does add another mechanical layer to 5th edition that isn't necessarily present. So while this is an interesting addition and something that you could probably port over to regular 5th edition as well, I'm not sure how well your players will like it. It's something that you'll have to kind of determine at the table whether or not your players have fun with it. It's kind of like critical fumbles. Some players really like that extra mechanic. Some players really hate it. Like, for example, Luke Hart despises critical fumbles. I've played with players who actually kind of like the idea, though. So yeah, your mileage may vary with this. You might want to try something new, but again, this could end up being super interesting, so I say give it a whirl and see how it plays out at your table. And then you've got the rules for harnessing the power of a star. So if you get to the star within 24 hours, basically the game master determines how you refine it, and then it can spark magic where there wasn't any and also push existing magic to its limits. So if you can't cast any magic, you can now get low-level spells. And then if you can cast magic, actually it doesn't mention if you're already a wizard, so I think this might be, let's see. Yeah, so the spells that the star draws out should be thematic and appropriate for the character. So yeah, basically, it's up to you and your GM to determine what kind of spells you can get. It seems to be just kind of low-level stuff. So it would probably be similar to having the Magic Initiate feat, where you would get a cantrip and a first-level spell. However, when you use... Let's see, and the spell automatically succeeds and rolls maximum damage when you cast it. But there is a cost to this. So whenever you use that star power, you roll a D100. And if you roll over 70, the spell level... Oh, actually, if you roll over 70 plus the spell level, nothing happens. If you roll equal or under, then you permanently lose health double the spell's level. So if you're using this, this is kind of like an emergency situation type of thing. It's a huge gamble. So basically you have to roll, if you're casting a cantrip, 71, or a first level spell, 71. Anything higher than that, you're looking at 70, all the way up to like 75, 76. I think it might actually top out at 5th level. I don't remember how high spell levels go in 5e, not off the top of my head, because I'm usually playing a martial character. Anyway. Actually, it might go all the way up to 7th, I think. But you shouldn't give a player a 7th level spell from this. So... yeah, basically you automatically lose health, equivalent to the spell's level, forever, if you fail this roll. So yeah, that you might think twice about that. And I'm guessing, if a... Okay, so yeah, this is for magic users. You can harness that power, and it becomes... Your spells automatically succeed and automatically do max damage. So if you're in a boss fight, let's say you decide to take on the Croc, and your wizard casts a fireball, this can ensure that you get max damage. But you may pay a price for that. So yeah, if you are non-magical, you just get new spells, and using them has kind of a cost associated with them. I'd still give a non-magic user the same ability to max everything out and roll, because it doesn't seem right that, just using kind of these basic spells, like if you get Green Flame Blade as a fighter, and you use it on someone, and you roll like 2 1s on your damage. And then the DM's like, okay, I know you did like 4 damage, but now you have to roll to see if you permanently lose health. That seems a little bit harsh. So I'd let them kind of max everything out the same way and have them take the same penalty. Or maybe choose not to max everything out, and they would avoid that penalty. So here we get into the cast, and here you can see some of Andrew's art. He has a very polygonal style. It's very storybook, which is cool. Andrew is an illustrator. He draws children's books for a living. So this is all pretty cool, and it's cool to see like this Lovecraftian nightmare here in kind of a children's book style. Is very interesting. And there's all kinds of crazy fairy stuff in here too, like Kate Sith. Mab is statted here. The crocodile is obviously statted. He's kind of a handful, so yeah, just be aware of that. There's crocodile spawn as well. They're less of a handful, but One thing I will say, with this being a 5th edition book, none of these things have CRs that I've seen. Yeah, I'm not seeing a CR as far as like what level you can throw at these things. So that's one criticism I would level at the book. While the CR system is kind of broken in 5th edition, and in a lot of ways doesn't really matter, because players can absolutely get lucky against something with a way higher CR, especially if that thing continues to miss, or they make saves against the spells that it's casting. So in a way, it doesn't really matter, but it's nice to see. It's nice to have. And there's all kinds of cool stuff here. You've got Father Longlegs. These are the great arachnids. Basically, they're giant daddy longlegs, and they're pretty nice. But then you have the giant spiders, who are not nice. And you've got the giants, who are, giant insects, which is freaky as hell. But there's a giant praying mantis. I might port some of that stuff over into Dark Sun. Just because that's all pretty cool. Then down here you've got Hook. Hook's kind of a badass. He's got an AC of 18. Not sure what kind of armor he's wearing. Probably studded leather. He's got 200 HP, resistance against non-magical weapons. If you use a ticking clock or a visible crocodile, then his point actions will be at disadvantage. And a crocodile within 30 feet acts as a fear spell, which is cool. He's got several different attacks. He's got a couple different poisons as well. And he has legendary actions. He can also attack with his hook. Then you've got another character called the Huntsman, who's also, kind of a badass. John Darling, the Lich. Let's see. Lost Boys. I don't think any of the Lost Boys here are named. No, they're not. So you can pretty much slot in your favorite ones, make up your own, that kind of stuff. So if you want Rufio in the game, you're just super into Hook, you love Dante Bosco, and you want Rufio in the game, you can stick him in here. Just give him Lost Boy stats. Maybe beef him up a little bit because he's kind of a badass, I suppose. And you got your mermaids. Michael Darling. Is that what Michael Darling looks like now? Or is that... Yeah, that's Michael Darling. So yeah, he's he's a smith. And he was taught by the gnomes to smith. So yeah, if you want a magical sword, you go see Michael. Then you've got some, Nethers, giant plated lizards. That's also something I could bring over into Dark Sun. And Peter Pan. 150 HP, 18 armor class. He's immune to charm. He's resistance to non-magical or non-iron weapons. He also gets legendary actions. and he can't die. Unless you discover his true name. So if you really want to kill Peter Pan, you have to discover his true name. And you've got Queen Mab, also pretty badass. Something tells me you probably shouldn't mess with Mab. You also have to know her true name to permanently kill her. It takes her 1d4 days to resurrect. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And you've got Shadows. You have the Shadow, who's also a badass. And then you have the Spiders. And they're all freaky because they're spiders. Then you have the Tilwith Teg. These are your dryads. You can bring Tiger Lily in here. Yep, that's under the names. So the Tilwith Teg youth, Tiger Lily could be one of them. Then you have Wendy, who is a swamp hag. Woolly rhinos. Those are interesting. I think Ronan might be a woolly rhino. What do you think, Elfie? He likes to hit things with his head, and he is very fluffy. So I am going to say that this is Ronan. Ronan is a woolly rhino. Speaking of which, he is right there. Come here, Ronan. Nope. Okay. He's busy. He has very important business to conduct. And then you've got your island map with, the quick hex references. So here's how it looks just, without the island, and here's how it looks with the island. And then you have in-depth explanations of what each hex has. So, the coral caves, the wetlands, Jolly Roger. And again, all of these are like 2-mile squares. And so it's on you to kind of, find out what's in these hexes, explore, and ultimately, I suppose, find your way out of Neverland if that's your goal. Solve whatever problems are going on there, again, if that's your goal. This is probably where you would find Michael, at the forge. Waterfall, this is where the crocodile goes to lay its eggs. Hangman Tree. All kinds of great stuff here. If we go down... Here we go from Neverland to Elephame, so if you cross over into the fairy world, this is what you'll be dealing with. And there's a lot of your kind of, fairy rules here. If you're familiar with the Dresden Files, you'll be familiar with a lot of this. Always, tell the truth, even if you have to be evasive. Be polite. Gift giving is, a trap. Even eating and drinking probably, probably wouldn't be a good idea. Although if you're eating off of something iron or drinking out of something iron, you can break the rules. And then there's defense against fairies, which holy water prevents crossing paths, spells, and theft. Salt defends against fairies. Iron is a big one. Iron weapons will kill them, so if you've got a sword. The fairies steal babies. And so there's whole areas to explore here. Um, let's see. What all do we have here? Is that the Lady of the Lake? Is she here? 'Cause that'd be cool. If you can fight Excalibur, that'd be awesome. And so, yeah, there's a lot that you have to kind of solve for if you're in Elefame. This is kind of hard mode. When you enter Elefame, there's not a hex map for it, first of all. At least not that I've seen. There might be one at the back, though. So we'll take a look at that. And you've got resources. Okay, yeah. So you've got maps of different regions, coral caves, maps of the crocodile's innards, the nest, the cunning camp, forge map, Giant's Hill, Gnome Hamlet, the bird's nest, if you want to go piss him off. Iron Mines, Home Underground. And then back here, John's Tower, the Jolly Roger and its various decks, the Mermaid Cove, pirate stores, the Skull Rock. Skull Rock is like a mega dungeon, it looks like. And I'm just going to keep moving through. This is all stuff that can happen in the skull. So, yeah. If you go there, things might happen. Tilwith Teg, Wendy's Hut. And these are different adventures that you can find as you move throughout. So this is kind of a resource so that your players aren't wandering around aimlessly. They can, you can have these come up as your players encounter various other intelligent creatures. So the gnomes, the cunning folk, the Tilwith Teg, even the giants might send you on some kind of adventure this way. These are different things you can encounter in the wild. Different fairy tricks, fairy trades. And then these are wards that John has on his tower. And here's some loot that you can encounter specific to Neverland. So there might be some interesting things that your party can encounter. The Lost Boys have traps set up everywhere. There's some materials, mermaid games, mountain traps, NPC guides as far as, who you'll encounter. You can roll randomly, or you can pick them. Objects, pirate and spider traps, and a big long list of plot hooks. There's also rumors. And this is the Star Surge table. So this is like your Neverland wild magic table that you can encounter here. All kinds of different things. Like a random target grows rabbit ears for 1 day and gets a +2 bonus to hearing-based checks. So it's both good and bad things if you cast a spell within 500 feet of a fallen star. Then you've got, trinkets and trophies, Tilwith Teg wards, wandering strangers, and whatever the NPCs are doing and why they did it. These are all just like resources to make the world have life. And then here, Andrew's got some short stories based on Neverland that you can read over. And that pretty much rounds out what we have here. We've got a couple different art pieces back here as well, if you want to see some of the sketches that he did. And this will tell you a little bit about some of the inspiration that Andrew got. And then down here, you've got different sketches that he made of the different things in Neverland, which is cool. So yeah, that's pretty much the setting in a nutshell. All in all, I think it's a good hex crawl, which is something that's really kind of missing from a lot of current D&D adventures. We've talked about this several times on the show, but role-playing games nowadays are very much focused on storytelling and adventures and stuff like that. Not so much focused on dungeon crawls or hex crawls. So this would be an interesting kind of old school throwback. Definitely a way to hook people in, who aren't so big on the story, are more, big on the exploration pillar of D&D, which is one that a lot of people forget about. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the concept, there are three main pillars of role-playing that games are all kind of built around. Those are combat, roleplay, and exploration. And exploration seems to be the bastard child that keeps getting forgotten about. Because people always seem to go, are you more into combat or are you more into roleplay? So this is very heavy on exploration. So if you are missing that in your favorite adventures, this is the way to go. Definitely go with this one. If you're not into Neverland, I still recommend you give it a look, because this will allow you to kind of, take a new slant on Neverland. And, if you're into whimsical adventure or even like dark fantasy, you can find something to like here. So all in all, I do recommend this setting. This is a very good book. Whether or not you're a Peter Pan fan, but especially if you are, definitely give this one a whirl. So that wraps up our look at Neverland for the day. Cool. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'm so glad that, we could discuss this particular setting and, take a look at what it has to offer, what it brings to the table. So, yeah, if you enjoy it, remember that's Neverland 5e. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it from Andrews McMeel. There's a couple different ways to get it. If you just look up Neverland 5e, you can find it. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's episode. Just as a reminder of what's coming up next week on Monday, the 9th at 8 p.m. Central, Seth Skorkowski is going to be joining us. It'll be his first time on, so I'll be glad to welcome him. Next Saturday, we are going to get back to Baldur's Gate. We'll be continuing that playthrough. What's pretty much going to happen is every other week I'm going to do Baldur's Gate, and then I'll do something else here for Danishes and Dragons. The week after next, the week that Hanker and Fernell is going to be on, I think what I'm going to do is create my backup character for Shag's Five Elders game, because recent events within that world have let me know that there's a distinct possibility that Hong Su Chang, the outsider, might not survive to the end of the campaign. And if that happens, I need to be ready with a backup character. So I'll be building my backup character not next week, but the week after. And also, to let you guys know in advance, the week of Thanksgiving, I don't currently have anything planned. I'll be out of town for Thanksgiving, so that weekend there's not going to be a Danishes and Dragons. There's probably also not going to be a regular Rollin' Bones episode. I'll let you know. I might do a Baldur's Gate play that Monday just to do something. Maybe I'll do another video game, because I've got a few kind of, D&D related games. I might get into Mordhau. I don't know. I'll coordinate with some people, see if we can come up with something. But there might not end up being a stream, and there's definitely not going to be a podcast that week. So, with that out of the way, I hope you'll join us on Monday to talk with Seth Skorkowski about his history in role playing and all of that. I look forward to seeing all of you. And remember, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.